Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Alexa, and today I thought I'd take you through kind of my thoughts on how to become a reader. So for those of you that don't know, I am a huge reader. I try to read every single day and I really love it. Honestly, I love all genres. I love everything about reading is just like But for those of you that may not be as reading inclined as I am, I have put together 10 tips for you guys on how to become an avid reader, because I definitely had periods of my life where I was not an avid reader. Even though as a kid I grew up, I loved reading, I kind of fell out of it for like a year or two, and then now I'm right back in the swing of it. So without further ado, I want to just get right into it. Alright, so my tip number one is to find your genre. Some people only like reading one type of genre, and sometimes you haven't read the right genre for you. I used to only go for one type of book, and that was like the teen fiction, like kind of corny, romantic sort of book, I guess. When I fell off of reading a couple years ago, I think it was just because I wasn't diversifying myself enough. So now I like to read a different type of book every time I pick up a new book. So right now I'm reading Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson, but my next book might be a nonfiction self-help book, and then the book after that might be a poetry book, and the book after that might be just like a Harry Potter book. I have been really making sure that I diversify myself and don't stick to one genre because I find myself getting bored. Also, sometimes some people only like reading nonfiction. Some people can only read fiction. So finding out where your sweet spot is, I think, helps a ton. Make sure you're reading stuff that you love, not just following the crowd. So find your genre is tip number one. So my tip number two is to actually put it into your routines. One of the easiest way to actually stick to reading is to have it put into your schedule every single day. As of the summer, I was trying to read a lot but really struggling, and I found that come this winter, I put it into my morning routine specifically, and every morning I just read a chapter, and that has helped me with my reading so much. Just putting it into your routine, whether it's only reading a little bit every morning for like 5 minutes, or whether it's reading a full chapter every morning or every evening before you go to bed, I found that it really helped to put it into my routines. So number three, I think this is one of the biggest issues people have with reading. They overcommit themselves. I know several people who have committed to reading a chapter a day, but they can't continue to read the book over a long period of time. I think it's really easy to make really hard goals about reading, whether it's read a book in a week, read a book in a month, read a chapter a day. There's things that are really easy for some people and really hard for others. So if you find that you're one of those people that struggles to read every day, sometimes putting a chapter a day on yourself is really hard on you, especially if your book has long chapters. So my recommendation is to not overdo yourself when it comes to this. Maybe just make it a goal to read for 5 minutes every morning, and that alone can be all you need. And then as you see that like 5 minutes every morning feels like it's not enough, you can continue to add more until maybe you build up to 10 minutes, you build up to a whole chapter in the morning. Stuff like that. Just don't overcommit yourself, because that will stress you out and make you not want to read. My next recommendation, if you want to get into reading, is to find a community. Whether that community is a book club, if it's just reading the same book as your friend is reading, or if you have a Goodreads account, I highly recommend Goodreads. That's where I find my bookie community. For me, I prefer Goodreads because I like looking up books and just knowing exactly what people think about it. A lot of the books that I end up picking out for my little personal library are books that I've really read the reviews, I've seen people love it or hate it or whatever, and I think Goodreads is an awesome place if you're trying to find a really good book that people love. That being said, I have a Goodreads account, and I will link it in my description box and also in the comments. If you guys have a Goodreads account, please follow me and I will follow you back, because I want friends who read books. Other than that, I would say definitely, I know people that have book clubs and love that. I know on Instagram there's Reese's Book Club. Reese Witherspoon has a book club on there, and she has amazing recommendations just amazing, honestly. Another one is just finding a friend and reading a book at the same time as they are and talking about it. I find that reading a book at the same time as somebody else is really amazing because then you can kind of talk about what happened, and it's kind of like exciting to like go back and forth with somebody and compare like your thoughts, you know? Another thing I would say is I highly recommend, if you struggle to find a book that you love, to read a book that is also like a TV series or a movie that you love. For example, when I was younger, I read The Hunger Games, and then they became movies, and it was like the best thing ever to read those books because I was like, oh my gosh, my like reality's coming to life. Another example, I read Big Little Lies, which became a TV show. Like, so many books become movies, and it is amazing to like watch your book world come to life. And sometimes the movie's terrible and you're like, wow, the book is so much better. Like, it's like amazing that they brought the characters to life in this way. So I highly recommend reading books that are also TV shows or movies if you have a hard time getting into books, because I feel like once you read the book, you like are committed to the characters. If you've already seen the show and you read it, then it's like you're already loving the story, so I think it makes it a lot easier to read. Okay, my next recommendation is to challenge yourself. Last year, this was one of the biggest things that helped me get back into reading. When I went into college, it was really hard for me to keep up with my reading habits. One of the things coming out of college that got me back into reading was setting a goal for a certain amount of books in the year. The way that I did this through my Goodreads account. I set a goal last year of 24 books in the year, so that's about 2 books per month. And I think I got to around 20, but also I only read half the year. So I really highly recommend either setting a monthly goal, like reading 1 book a month, 12 books a year, or setting a yearly goal like me. I did 24 books in a year. I know people that do like 30 books in a year. If you're not that avid of a reader, maybe you want to read 1 book every 2 months, and that's just fine. But like, setting that goal out there is like so motivating, and honestly I feel like it drives me a lot of the time to read more. So I highly recommend setting goals for yourself reading wise because it definitely helps. I highly recommend audiobooks. I have read, well, not read, I've listened to a couple of audiobooks and I've really enjoyed it, especially for long drives. I'm not really the type that will just like sit around and listen to books, but if you have like this excuse that you don't have enough time to read a book, you are wrong. You can listen to audiobooks while you do the dishes, while you clean the house, while you do laundry. You can listen to them on your commute to work. You can listen to them during your breaks. I mean, there's so many ways that you can incorporate audiobooks into your life if you don't have time to physically sit down and read. So my number 8 tip is to make reading something that isn't a chore per se, but something that you look forward to. I think one of people's biggest mistakes is they set this goal of, I want to be a reader, and then it's like every time they sit down to read, they're like, oh, I have to read again, but it's one of my goals, so I guess I'll do it. Whereas if you just were excited to sit down and read, you're like, oh my goodness, I get the chance and the opportunity to learn, I get the opportunity to get this amazing story. Like, there's so many positive spins on it, and I know a lot of people that treat reading like, it's such a bore, it's so much effort, but I should do it, but I don't know if I want to do it. And I think that act of not fully committing to reading is what makes a lot of people fall off their goals of reading. Also, if you hate a book, why continue reading it? There are so many books that I've literally just been like, this is too much for me, and I put it down. And that's all you need to do. You don't need to force yourself through a book if you absolutely hate it. I highly recommend just let it go, let it be free if it's a terrible book. My number 9 tip is that I recommend finding a comfy little corner, a comfy space, a little reading nook, somewhere where you love to like just sit down and cuddle up and grab a good book. I think this chair for me is where I like to read the most, but honestly, having a little spot where you always like to read, I think that enhances your reading capabilities. I don't know what book I heard this from, but I did hear that like if you assign certain spaces in your life to certain activities, it makes it easier for your brain to commit to those activities, if that makes sense. So if I have a certain spot where I do yoga, my brain more easily falls into the yoga mindset. If I have a place where I read my book, my brain more easily wants to read. A place where you eat, your brain is happier. I don't know, your brain just compartmentalizes in a way that is hard to understand, but honestly it really helps to have like a specific cozy corner where you love to read. Number 10, my last tip for reading books. I honestly think that, don't take this the wrong way, but not having enough money to buy books is not an excuse not to read. There's so many resources that are easily attained to read books, be it your public library. There's like these like little libraries where you like take a book, leave a book. There's so many ways that you can really easily get books. Same thing with like if you want to buy books but you don't want to pay full price, go to your used bookstore. Honestly, I could spend hours walking around used bookstores, and I highly recommend, because they're adorable and I love them. There's so many options for reading these days, and I honestly think that not having money is not an excuse to not read, because books are literally everywhere for any price or for no price at all, like honestly. So thank you so much for tuning into this how to become an avid reader video. I really love reading, honest to God, I do. I have a pile of like 1,000,000 books in my bedroom. It's too much, but I love it. So if you guys have any really good book recommendations, feel free to comment down below. And also, please go follow my Goodreads, because I want more friends that read like I do. So please follow that Goodreads account, and I will follow you back. And with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!
I could be wrapped around your arms instead of being lonely. We could be gazing at the stars, but now it feels just like I wandered off into a room and closed the door behind me. I never gave the